KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. and welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. What an amazing week and weekend it has been. I just got in from New York, where I spent the better part of last week with Reverend Al Sharpton and the National Action Network at their national convention, really international in scope, where activists came from around the country to begin the process of organizing under the leadership of Reverend Sharpton's very careful research, which includes boycotting Pepsi. They have 21 days to respond to our requests on why they are withdrawing their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a massive corporation. Lay's potato chips, you name it, Pepsi probably owns it and has some access to these kinds of consumer goods, and our community could have a tremendous impact in teaching a national lesson about not disrespecting us as consumers of their products. We'll be looking forward to hearing from Reverend Al Sharpton in the not too distant future regarding that economic boycott. And then on April 5th, the day after the commemoration of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans protested. They're feeling it. I mean, the American people are feeling it, from Social Security to Medicare to Medicaid to the Department of Education to USAID. The American people are outraged and upset at Elon Musk and the unprecedented access that he has to the United States government at this hour, cutting aid and economic development programs around the world in preparation for the largest tax break, quite possibly in American history. With that said, Trump's offered and signed off on retaliatory tariffs all over planet Earth. China most recently responded with a 35 or 34% tariff. 34% sounds very close to 34 felony convictions. So they're playing some kind of game here. My very special guest today is Dr. Cephas Nanwab. Dr. Nanwab's research focuses on economic development, economic inequality, economic impact studies, international trade, and foreign direct investments. He served as principal investigator and co-author of the North Carolina Policy Collaboratory Research Project on the economic impact of COVID-19 in the Piedmont Triad region. He's also author of the Economic Impact Study of North Carolina A&T State University, my alma mater. Dr. Nanwab, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be on.
It's our indeed honor. I'd like to begin by playing this clip.
We begin tonight with the mass protests from coast to coast. Americans taking to the streets, voicing their frustrations with the policies of the Trump administration and Elon Musk, the world's richest man. All of this with the latest round of tariffs taking effect today, 10% on most goods coming into the U.S. Thousands gathering on the National Mall for the so-called hands-off protests organized by Democratic activists. Crowds also growing in Charlotte, North Carolina, New York, Chicago, and San Francisco. Many protesting the mass firings of federal workers and immigration policies. President Trump urging Americans to hang tough in a social media post earlier today, calling this an economic revolution that is already bringing jobs and businesses. But the president's tariff rollout has sent markets plunging and fueled fears of a possible recession. We have team coverage tonight. ABC's Jay O'Brien leads us off from Washington.
Tonight, hours into the start of President Trump's 10% tariffs covering most goods entering the U.S. Demonstrations erupting across the country, from Boston to Charlotte to Texas to California, protesting Trump and billionaire Elon Musk. ABC's Christian Cordero in Washington, D.C.
Hands off are the two words that's bringing everyone out here. And that's serving as a springboard for any of the many issues they care about. Throughout the day today, we have seen signs that say hands off our schools, hands off our bodies, hands off our Social Security. It seems everyone out here has a message about what they consider government overreach.
And tonight, as President Trump's first round of reciprocal tariffs officially snap into place, with steeper tariffs just days away from more than 50 countries. Musk appearing to take aim on social media at White House economic advisor Peter Navarro, the architect of Trump's tariff policies. Navarro downplaying the stock market sell-off Thursday and Friday, the worst 2 days on Wall Street since the pandemic.
We're in a situation where we're simply rebalancing and restructuring. I can guarantee you that the market will find its bottom, that we will have the Dow hit 50,000 easily during the Trump second term.
Most economists warning U.S. consumers should brace for higher prices and disruptions. Grappling with Trump's tariffs on foreign cars and car parts, the British automaker of Jaguars and Land Rovers announcing it's pausing all U.S. shipments. And China already hitting back with its own 34% tariff on all U.S. imports.
I think it's still a little uncertain of exactly how that's all going to shake out.
But President Trump doubling down, adamant tariffs will bring home jobs and businesses, saying Americans should hang tough. It won't be easy, but the end result will be historic. With a deepening global trade war, Trump at his Florida golf course again today. The White House issuing its only official statement of the day, congratulating the president on winning the semifinals of his club's senior championship.
And Jay O'Brien joins us now from the White House. Jay, we're learning some Republican lawmakers are breaking with President Trump, introducing bills to help rein in these tariffs. But could they actually pass?
Yeah, with a handful of congressional Republicans introducing legislation to allow Congress the power to vote on any future tariffs the president would enact. That's being pushed by Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, typically a top Trump Republican ally, who now says he's worried about the financial future of farmers in his state. Democrats calling on more Republicans to join him. But even if there is bipartisan buy-in, this legislation would also like.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, my very special guest is Dr. Cephas Nanwab. We're going to talk about the basics. What is a tariff? What are the consequences of tariffs? What their impacts are on the poor, the locked out, the disenfranchised. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, Dr. Cephas Nanwab.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. Before the fire, Altadena was a real-life Wakanda. A thriving black oasis just 15 miles from downtown Los Angeles. 80% black residents were homeowners, building intergenerational wealth against the odds. It was a hub of black-owned businesses, churches, and cultural institutions. It stood as a symbol of black resilience and economic independence. Then, in a matter of hours, it was gone. The fire tore through homes, swallowed businesses, and left behind a painful void. But was it just an unstoppable act of nature, or was negligence involved? Did officials ignore early warning signs? Were the response efforts delayed or insufficient? What role, if any, did corporate or government failures play? Survivors are demanding answers. Don't miss our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall. The Eden Altadena Fire, 100 days and counting, on Wednesday, April 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Robinson Park Recreation Center, 1081 North Fair Oaks in Pasadena. Join Dominic DePrima, Nee Cordelai Corte, James Farr, Tavis Smiley, and a panel of survivors, community leaders, and experts as we commemorate day 100 since the wildfires flared up, and we discuss where we go from here. It's KBLA's Eden Altadena Fire, 100 Days and Counting Town Hall, Wednesday, April 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Robinson Park Recreation Center in Pasadena. Light refreshments to follow. Admission is free, but sign-up is required at our KBLA1580.com website. The first 100 attendees will receive a complimentary air purifier. This is a community call to action brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black flag.
Can your pad absorb everything and stay fresh? Always Radiant with Flex Foam can. Get up to 0 leaks, 0 odor, and 0 feel, because Flex Foam is the only pad with a flexible foam core. You heard me, foam. Always Radiant is so thin, it feels like nothing, yet protects like nothing else. Can your pad do that? For up to 100% leak-free protection, try Always Radiant to see what Flex Foam can do for you.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Dr. Cephas Nanwab. Dr. Nanwab is a college professor at North Carolina A&T State University, and all that tells me is we are going to hear the truth. Dr. Nanwab, look at this picture of all of these people protesting around the country. But for our listeners, we want to start with the basics. What is a tariff?
Great question. Well, a tariff is a fancy name for a tax. That is what it is. It is a tax on an imported good. So anything that is made in another country and it's being imported into the US, a tariff is applied to that good. And again, it's a tax that is paid by the importer. Whoever is bringing in the goods from another country into the US has to pay that tax at the port of entry into the US. Literally, that's what it is. It is a tax that has to be paid on the goods coming into the US.
So, but, before this particular term of the president, America had entered into trade relationships with Europe, with African countries, with the Chinese, with the Japanese. We've heard about the North American Free Trade Agreement, which took those of us who are 60 years or older. We kind of remember the process for the internationalization, if you will, and the globalization of the economy. I mean, but the idea that an American car is actually made in America, when these parts, literally hundreds, thousands of parts to create one car, are made all over the world. What you're saying is every single part that is imported into the United States is subject to this tax.
That is correct. And that is why it's generating so much confusion and uncertainty, right? Because you're right, the auto industry is so integrated globally, such that you have parts moving across borders multiple times, right? And so if you have a blanket tariff of 25% on cars or auto parts, well, so you're saying that each time a part crosses the border, a 25% tax will be applied to that part, as long as it's coming to the United States.
And I don't think the American people fully understand that. We might, for example, in my former congressional district, we had a Ford stamping plant. That is, they stamped the outer shell of the car out of aluminum, steel, or whatever product. And then about 20 miles away, they had a Ford assembly plant in my district. And that assembly plant has assembly plant literally has hundreds of local businesses and suppliers right next to that plant to provide that stamped frame parts. And what you're saying is some of those parts cross the border multiple times as the car is assembled. Hence, each time it crosses the border, it is subject to the tax.
That's correct. Again, as it stands, it says that anything coming, any auto-related parts, cars or parts thereof coming into the United States will be subject to that tax. And there's no exemption that at this point we know of. So it will apply to that as well.
It seems to me that that the president of the United States and various administrations have always had the power to impose taxes on various imports. But we've never seen a president of the United States impose tariffs on products on the scale that this president is imposing tariffs or these taxes. Are there global consequences for this behavior and for these actions?
Well, we are already seeing that. China is starting to retaliate, right? They did that last week with a 34% tariff on American goods coming into China. So the global consequences of what we're seeing is that it has unleashed the trade war. And this is fast becoming a global trade war. It's not going to be only China. Other countries might also join in the trade war by putting tariffs on U.S. goods coming into their countries. And so the global effect is that we're going to have the risk of a global recession, right? Well, all countries going into recession, that is not a good thing for any one country. And the fact is that a trade war has no winner, right? Everybody will lose in that scenario of a global recession. So you think about it, it started in the US. Well, other countries are not going to just take it lying down. They have to find a way. Well, the president has talked about negotiating with some countries. We don't know that yet. But it's possible that even if it's negotiated, there is going to be some effect globally. The uncertainty that we are seeing in the stock market is one sure sign of the effect that it is having, right? So even if we take away the possibility of a recession, the way the stock market is reacting and the fact that so far trillions of dollars have just disappeared in the stock market in these last couple days or so is indicative of the wide-ranging impact this could have on people, who are invested in the stock market. I mean, if you have a retirement account, 401k, just imagine how this could play out over the next however months or years that this trade war goes on, right? We're going to have the uncertainty continuing, the stock market continuing to react negatively, and people see their investments and their stock portfolios disappearing before their own eyes, and that is not a good thing.
You talk about uncertainty. I remember when the president was running, he used to use terms like, we're going to win bigly. We're going to win. I'm going to use tariffs to win bigly. We've even seen between Mexico and even some of the Canadian tariffs, the president willing to stop the tariff talk or even extend dates before he would allow tariffs to take effect. So they're kind of being used as a leverage to exact something, I'm assuming, favorable to the American people and not to himself and or to his allies personally. But it remains to be seen that if the president of the United States makes the decision to withdraw a tariff, you're suggesting, I believe you're suggesting, that the damage could already have been done. Is that correct?
That is correct, because we're talking about trust in this situation. How other countries are going to have trust in the US that the policy going forward is going to be predictable and not one of today a tariff, 25% today, 20% tomorrow, or maybe no tariff at all. That uncertainty does not bode well for anybody, business, household, right? Anybody that is thinking about planning anything. It's not good. And so it erodes trust in our allies, globally, that, if you are imposing tariffs on your allies, countries that you have trade agreements with, talking about Japan, you're talking about the EU and other, then how are they going to trust our word as a country that, well, we will keep our word going forward, that we're not going to sign a trade agreement and then go behind and impose tariffs on them? And so, yes, that is a legitimate issue that countries are facing, whether they can even trust the US at all on anything, like policy-wise, whether it's trade policy or any other policy, because what they're seeing right now does not give them confidence that the US will keep its word. And so it becomes an issue of, well, is the US going to be an ally of these countries, or you're going to have to find a way to move on without the US as an ally, right? And so, yeah, these are critical questions that countries are asking themselves.
Let me follow up on that question by asking this other question about the idea of uncertainty, and that is, for example, we've been talking about cars, but we're talking also about microchips. We're talking about things that are produced in China and other parts of the world that make their way to the United States. Trump seems to make the case that he'd like more microchips and these kinds of computing chips produced here in the United States. But there is a significant lag between the ability to ramp up and create these kinds of highly sophisticated chips and devices that impact our televisions, our cell phones, our laptops, the computers in our cars, the way in which we engage the artificial intelligence community. These tariffs, in fact, impact every facet of them. My refrigerator is operated off of computer chips produced in China. The consequences of this are not just limited to cars. These airplanes that fly across our country, the air traffic controllers, and all of the sophisticated systems that we use, almost none of these parts are sole sourced in the United States. Am I correct, Doc?
That's true. In fact, if you go back a few years ago, the previous administration, President Biden, they realized that this is a very sensitive sector, the semiconductor industry. It's very critical to national security. And that is why they signed the CHIPS Act and brought on other, the investment that they were making in trying to boost the manufacturing of chips in the US, right? Started investing in companies like Intel to reshore the manufacturing of these critical semiconductors in the US. Yeah, you're right. Right now, most of it is made in Taiwan, the TSMC company that makes the most of the semiconductors that are needed. So right now, we are at a critical juncture with the change in the administration, and we are seeing that there's movement, perhaps not in the line that the previous administration had taken in terms of trying to directly invest in and promote the CHIPS Act. And of course, they also had other investment, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. Part of it was a massive investment in these critical areas as well. So it does take a while to get this type of manufacturing off the ground. Significant amount of investment is needed. Currently, Taiwan is the leader in the manufacturing of these semiconductors. And we know that it does have an effect. Putting tariffs on things like that affect just about everything, as you said. Think about the iPhone. The price of the iPhone, according to some estimates, could increase by more than 50% or something like that. So you are going to have the effect rippling across the economy. Anything that uses chips will have an impact. You mentioned your refrigerator, right? Cars, smartphones, everything, just about everything that uses a chip is going to be impacted by the tariffs that are coming into effect. And so the effect is real. We are all going to feel it. Everybody will feel it as long as you use any form of technology that has a chip embedded in it.
You know, Doc, when I was in Congress, I was the vice chairman of the Foreign Operations Committee, and we were responsible largely for providing United States aid, USAID, to poor African, sub-Saharan African countries. When I went to Liberia, for example, and spent time with President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the former president of Liberia, she took me on a tour of rubber plantations within Liberia, and she said, "Jesse, this is a Goodyear plantation. This plantation right here is responsible for 90% of rubber used in Goodyear tires throughout the world." It's really interesting to me, and I know that we're going to have some time to talk about this in the next two segments, but that Africa provides so many raw materials to the rest of the world, but they come back to Africa as finished products. They come back as completed products. The ramifications for the trade war impact Africa and poor nations that produce and provide raw materials to the world as well. Correct. Share with us your thoughts about that, Doc.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of raw materials are exported. So just think about a country like Ghana, or think South Africa, that export a lot of mineral products. You're talking about gold, copper, diamond, and things like that. These countries, as you mentioned, do not add much value before exporting. And so they are always at the mercy of the receiving countries, who take these raw materials at ridiculously low prices, right? Process them, and if they resell it back to the African countries at ridiculously high prices that the average person cannot afford. Take, for example, cocoa. A lot of African countries, the Ivory Coast, Ghana, and a lot of other, they produce cocoa that they do not process. They export the raw cocoa beans. Same story with coffee. East African countries, talking about Uganda, Tanzania, and other, they export coffee beans, raw coffee, not processed. And the price that they command, of course, on the world market, coffee bean does not fetch any high price, right? And then you have companies like the Starbucks and so forth, and they buy the coffee beans at low prices, and in a way are making profit off the backs of the farmers who produce these commodities. So the effect on the African countries who are not able to benefit fully from the labor of the farmers who produce these raw commodities is really staggering. But the effect of the tariff, it's even worse than that, because now not only are they getting low prices for the raw commodities that they're exporting, but they also having now to bear the negative effect of the tariff.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, Dr. Cephas Nanwab is going to share with us the impact of the tariffs on some of the poorest countries in the world. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. A second child has died in Texas' growing measles outbreak, now nearing 500 cases. Health officials say Black communities face higher death rates due to lower vaccination rates. Experts stress the MMR vaccine is the best protection. New York City is suing 9 major distributors for illegally selling flavored e-cigarettes. Black Mayor Eric Adams says they are targeting kids with addictive products. The city wants to block sales and is demanding damages. Singer Cassie will testify under her own name in Sean Diddy Combs' upcoming trial, where he faces charges including sex trafficking and racketeering. The trial starts May 5th, and Diddy denies all allegations. And Atlanta's new 404 Day Parade brought hundreds downtown to celebrate culture and community. Held on April 4th, the event featured floats, dancing, and Black Mayor Andre Dickens as Grand Marshal. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. continue their dream of education, or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the title? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Mookie Betts, the only African-American player on the Dodgers roster, joined his teammates Monday morning at the White House for a celebration with President Trump. Trump invited the Dodgers to honor the team for their World Series championship last season. When the invitation was extended to the Dodgers in March, Betts said he was undecided if he would attend the ceremony. During Trump's first term in 2019, Betts boycotted a White House visit with the Boston Red Sox after they won the World Series. Betts said he joined his teammates Monday morning because he did not want to be a distraction. During the 20-minute ceremony, Dodgers pitcher Clayton Kershaw gave Trump a Dodgers jersey with the number 47. The Dodgers White House visit drew mixed reactions from Dodgers fans because of Trump's controversial policies affecting minorities around the country. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Hi, I'm Dominique DePrima, and it's almost time to celebrate KBLA's 4th anniversary, coming up Juneteenth 2025. We'll be marking the achievement with 4 key community events, including a special symposium, luncheon, and brain trust hosted by me entitled The State of Black Women in Los Angeles. Keep it locked here for details on how to join us for this groundbreaking symposium examining the unique challenges, triumphs, and contributions of Black women in Los Angeles in the areas of education, healthcare, community leadership, cultural and political contributions. This public convocation will provide a critical forum to address the specific social, economic, and political realities facing Black women in LA today. We'll go live with a radio broadcast and YouTube live stream, a public discussion, and a private dialogue with some of LA's most impactful women. It's an affirmation of Black women standing at the intersection of race and gender in times of adversity while demonstrating remarkable resilience and leadership. We will listen and we will speak out and be heard, all in service of finding opportunities and solutions. Please plan to join us in celebrating our 4th anniversary by amplifying the voices of Black women. For more on our symposium and 4 events celebrating 4 years on the air, simply stay tuned or keep an eye on KBLA1580.com and help make this Juneteenth more jubilant with all of us at KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Dr. Cephas Nanwab. Dr. Nanwab's research focuses on economic development, economic inequality, economic impact studies, international trade, and foreign direct investments. Dr. Nanwab, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be back again.
Just before the break, we were talking about rubber in Liberia, cocoa in Ghana, coffee beans throughout the African continent, minerals in South Africa, raw materials taken from the ground and from the earth, exported. Then they come back to Africa in the form of finished materials that are extraordinarily expensive. The impact of tariffs between the superpowers and those that Donald Trump has targeted in Europe, Canada, and the more developed countries must have a devastating impact on third world countries.
Right. I mean, you think of it as a fight, a local African proverb that says when two elephants are fighting, it is the ants, the little ones, that suffer the consequences. So if you have this global trade go on that we are witnessing, if it is supposed to be a trade between the giants on the global trade environment, right? Well, the ones who really suffer the consequences of that trade war are the poor. In the developing world, we're talking about people who live on less than $1 a day. Their lives are now going to be made much worse from the trade war because these countries with very fragile economies who depend on the exports of their raw materials, as we mentioned before, that already these do not command any good return, right? There's not much revenue coming off of the export of these raw materials to finance economic development in these developing countries. And you put in tariff on these countries, you compound the situation because now they are going to face lower demand for their products. And that means that prices are going to be further depressed for them, right? So with the depressed prices, well, it just worsens their budget situations. I mean, if you already are a poor, indebted country trying to survive, trying to meet your basic needs, talking about healthcare or access to food for your population, any drop in budget, any thing that tariff that would affect how much revenues that they're getting from their export has a direct and immediate effect on the livelihood of the people in these countries.
Dr. Nanwab, because I mean, first of all, you're brilliant, and I already know that because you teach at North Carolina A&T State University, Aggie Pride. But let me just raise this question with you. But it also means that heavily indebted countries, poor countries, end up, in order to compete, having to allow the developed world to dig even deeper within their countries for more raw materials. They're taking more out, and they are getting very little in exchange for the difference that they have to make up in order to address their basic budgetary concerns.
Right. And the worst of it is that in the case of minerals, these are non-renewable resources that are not going to be available for future generations. And the more they mine these resources, the less is available for the future generations. And the prices that they get for these resources are ridiculous. You have cases where these global conglomerates go and sign deals with African countries, and you wouldn't believe that the commission that goes to, or the royalties that actually accrue to the country is something like 10%, in most cases 20%. And so they are basically ripping off these countries, taking up the resources, and only 10-20% of it is given to the people. And that is part of the story of the underdevelopment of these highly indebted countries.
And it happens every single cycle. For example, Elon Musk needs lithium the natural resource and cobalt in order to produce the batteries for Tesla cars. Well, you get more and more and more lithium and cobalt from sub-Saharan Africa, and to drive his cars, while at the same time we know what his politics are and what the consequences are. But ultimately, the burden is being felt by the poorest of the poor, who can't have health care, fresh water, vaccinations, and the basic modern developments that they need to stay alive, because their minerals themselves don't compare to the end product and the value as a result of the tariffs and the trade war.
Right. So it is true that there's a lot of injustice in the trade of these minerals. To power the technology that the Western world uses for the high standard of living, and then you compare that with the standard of living of people in the third world countries who are struggling to survive, again, on $1 a day, and seeing these resources being taken out of their countries and not getting any return on the resources that they have, contributing to the underdevelopment, contributing to economic and political instability. A lot of time you see these countries disintegrate, descend into war, because the basic resource, the basic infrastructure that is supposed to be there to ensure that they can have a meaningful life, do not exist. The infrastructure, you're talking about education, you're talking about healthcare, in most of the poor countries is underdeveloped because of lack of investment. And you tie in the fact that, again, these resources are non-renewable. It's not like there's going to be more gold deposit or more diamonds coming up, right? Once used, they're gone. And so the tragedy is that there is a generation that is coming in these countries that would have no access to the resources that once were there, right? The resources have been mined and are extracted and taken away, and there is nothing in return. So you're losing the resources, but there is no investment in the economy by way of infrastructure that will ensure that the economy can grow and be able to support the future generations.
I don't think I think that those of us, those Americans or people around the world who live in global capitalistic systems, they don't see themselves as looking at African, sub-Saharan African, poorly indebted nations and their future generations, because they live in the present for numbers on Wall Street and in the commodities exchanges and for their 401ks. This clearly happens here in certain communities here in the United States, where there's no investment in communities that descend into, kind of, fratricide, brothers fighting brothers for limited resources on the south side of Chicago, in Harlem, in Crenshaw, and throughout our country. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Dr. Cephas Nanwab, a PhD in economics. And when we come forward, I want to ask Dr. Nanwab what his students are saying about the trade war, about the attack on HBCUs, and what the future holds for a high-quality education in the United States. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I feel so alone. I'm embarrassed to talk about it.
How can I help my kid if I can't help myself?
I can't remember when I wasn't stressed.
I don't like to inside.
When you feel overwhelmed by your thoughts and emotions, it's okay to get help.
you are not alone. CalHope is here for you with free, safe, and confidential mental health resources for youth, young adults, families, and you. Find support now at calhope.org.
Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. S&P volunteers work in their community educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an S&P open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit caspvolunteer.org. Protect yourself from Medicare card scams. Scammers may call, email, or even knock on your door claiming they need your Medicare info, asking for money or threatening to cancel your benefits. Don't fall for it. It's a scam. Remember, Medicare doesn't need to verify your information. They already have it. Medicare won't charge you for a new card and will never threaten to cancel benefits. Check your Medicare statements for suspicious charges and report scams to the California Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-855-613-7080. We're here to help.
Attention. Have you racked up $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Are you barely getting by making minimum payments? With credit card debt reaching all-time highs, National Debt Relief is notifying consumers about significant debt relief options currently being made available to help those with overwhelming credit card debt. These options may reduce a large portion of credit card debt for those who qualify. You don't need to declare bankruptcy or take out a consolidation loan, and you may only have to pay back a fraction of what you owe, even if you have bad credit. National Debt Relief has already reduced the credit card debt for more than 550,000 consumers. So don't wait. If you owe $10,000, $20,000, or even $100,000 in credit card debt, you can now take advantage of this financial debt relief as the cost of living continues to skyrocket. To check what debt reduction you may qualify for, call 800-237-8585. That's 800-237-8585. Again, that's 800-237-8585.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
I can't believe how spotless my floors look after using the Swiffer Power Mop. No more dragging around a heavy mop and messy bucket. Now I get the same deep clean without all the work. Thanks to the powerful solution and scrubbing pad of the Swiffer Power Mop, dirt and grime don't stand a chance, and I don't break a sweat. Mic drop. Mop drop.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
A smarter way to mop. Try it or your money back.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. In this, our final segment with Dr. Cephas Nanwab. He served as principal investigator and co-author of the North Carolina Policy Collaborative Research Project on the economic impact of COVID-19 in the pandemic triad region. Dr. Nanwab's research focuses on economic development, economic inequality, economic impact studies, international trade, and foreign direct investments. Dr. Nanwab, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you. Great to be back.
Dr. Nanwab, tell us what the students are saying. What are young people saying, the young men and women that are before you in your classes every day, about what's going on?
Yeah, so we have always taught our students about tariffs as something theoretical. And now the students get to see that, oh, this stuff is not theory. It's not something that we learn in the textbooks. They're seeing it firsthand, and the reaction from the students is one of shock. Why is this happening? Why are we living through this? What is the need, or what is the reason why tariffs are being levied on everything coming from everywhere? And I think just like everybody else, it's one of confusion, and again speaks to the lack of clarity about the reason for this trade war that we are in.
Well, I'm certainly hopeful. When I was at North Carolina A&T, I registered of the 4,000 students that were enrolled at A&T when I was a student there. We registered about 3,600 of them to vote, and we convinced them, whether they were from New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, that they had to register at Cooper Hall. They had to register at Haley Hall. They had to register at Barbie Hall. They had to register locally so that we could have some impact in this process. But I can only imagine that young people who are studying business and economics at North Carolina A&T State University have to be asking themselves the questions, as you suggested, that in the book they were theoretical, but the application of them, or at least the provocative nature and unilateral nature of them from the government and its adverse impact on nations that have relied upon the trust, as you said it, of the U.S. government, the faithfulness in the dollar, the certainty of the markets, that the confusion itself has got to be devastating to the economic and the educational learning environment.
Right. It is devastating. The impact that we are beginning to see spans over into every aspect of life, where everyone is all of a sudden talking about this as they are seeing it in real time. It's happening, and the effect of it, for example, in the stock market, everyone is concerned, and rightfully so. And the concern that it could lead to a recession, right? It's getting people more confused.
At the top of the program, Doc, Navarro was saying, one of the advisors to the president and the architects of the tariff regimen, was saying that the stock market itself could rebound up to 50,000 points as a result of the short-term pain. Do you believe that? Do you buy that?
Well, there's no evidence to show that, right? We don't know on what basis he is saying that. The thing is that investors hate uncertainty. It's not only investors. Everybody hates uncertainty. Whether you're a household, you're a business, you need the certainty to be able to plan ahead. Looking out a month, 2 months, a year, 2 years. In the case of businesses, they plan 3, 4, 5 years ahead. And given all the uncertainty about the breadth of the tariff, the depth in some cases, you are not in a position to tell what is going to happen in 3 months from now. And so it becomes very difficult to plan. And that uncertainty means that the stock market is not going to stabilize in given what we are seeing, right? Except that these tariffs are, again, undone. We just don't have the clarity that the stock market will all of a sudden stop and the uncertainty ends and everything goes back to normal within. The difficulty is that for investors, they're looking at what does all this imply about economic growth, about the economy? Is the economy going to grow at all? Is unemployment going to increase, right? And given all of that, people are very nervous.
Can we recover?
What investors tend to do when they're nervous is pull out of the stock market and go into some safe assets.
Wow.
For example, treasury securities, bonds, right? So you see a case of investors seeking safety. And that will continue until there is certainty that all of these will come down. That is, tariff will go back to normal or completely undone.
Can we recover?
That is a big question. Is the harm already done? Again, it goes back to the question of trust. If the president announces today that, well, he's rescinding all the tariffs, can we trust? Can the foreign companies or other countries trust that a month from now, 2 months from now, or next year, there won't be another round of tariffs coming? Nobody has the answer to that. Nobody lives in President Trump's head, so we don't know. And for that reason, the uncertainty looks likely to continue, and we're going to have the negative reactions that we are seeing, which possibly could spill over and affect the real economy.
I've heard the statement has been read, when I lose my job, it's a recession. I'm sorry. When you lose your job, it's a recession. But when I lose my job, it's a depression. Is that recoverable?
So I will go back to history. We've been through this before. In the 1930s, there was what was called the Smooth-Hawley tariff. That is credited for making the Great Depression worse. And what we're seeing today is very reminiscent of that. The extent of the tariffs that we are seeing looks like the ones that we experienced in the Great Recession under the Smooth-Hawley tariffs. And so if these tariffs continue, the extent of the damage to the economy, while we cannot say it's going to be a depression, it looks likely that the economy might experience a recession. Now, how severe will the recession be? It depends how long the tariffs are in place, how long the trade war goes on, and the extent of retaliation of other countries. That could likely just make the trade war drag on and get deeper and deeper. And so we would have a very bad recession, global recession, if it continues.
My very special guest has been Cephas Nanwab. He's a PhD in economics, associate professor at North Carolina A&T State University. He's been breaking down tariffs, the anxiety that's being felt by the American people. I hope to have Dr. Cephas Nanwab back on our program in the future because he spoke plain language economics. I feel like I've learned something today, and I have an undergraduate degree in economics. Dr. Nanwab, thank you for being on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.